Welcome to Haunted Canada. Hi everyone, this is Nadine. Before we get started with episode 27, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that I've got some pretty exciting news coming for this podcast. Now, I can't tell you all the exciting news just yet, but please know that it's going to be pretty awesome and I'm very excited about it. After the release of this episode, number 27, there's going to be a 2-week break and Haunted Canada will return on Monday, October 7th. Now, on with the show. On episode 27, we're going to head to the Prairie province of Saskatchewan to delve into the many ghosts and hauntings surrounding the historic Gravelbourg convent and school. Nestled in the small and unique town of Gravelbourg, Saskatchewan, surrounded by the wheat fields and local farms, is the historic and haunted Gravelbourg School, a towering building that is steeped in history and eerie folklore. Rising 4 stories high, the structure looms over the vast prairie landscape, its imposing presence hinting at a darker, untold tale. The beautifully constructed building is an architectural marvel with captivating stained glass windows and design features. The historic school brings you back to a time when the laughter of the students and the crisp footsteps of the nuns echo throughout the hallways. While the building did serve as a convent and a school for many decades, it's the lingering spirits of the nuns and the students that now wander throughout the empty corridors.
So here we're looking at the former Sisters Chapel. They tell me that the statue was made in Italy. The convent was also used as a boarding school. So they attracted girls from a large area that wanted to get a French education.
The school was originally built in 1916 during World War I, and continued to operate during the Spanish flu, the influenza epidemic that tragically killed over 50,000 men, women, and children throughout Canada from 1918 to 1920. When Gravelbourg was built, it housed a convent for the Sisters of Jesus and Mary. The Sisters of Jesus and Mary were originally founded in 1817 in the picturesque city of Lyon, the third largest city in France. The religious order made their way to Quebec in 1855 and eventually set out across the rugged prairies and arrived in the small French town of Gravelbourg, Saskatchewan in 1915. Father Gravel wanted to create a francophone settlement in Saskatchewan to attract French settlers in the area, which is exactly what he did. The nuns from the Sisters of Jesus and Mary traveled from Quebec all the way to Saskatchewan, not only to set up a convent, but also to replace the beloved yet inexperienced temporary teachers. As the school was not built yet, the nuns taught all of their classes in a small chapel house known as Maison Blanche, the White House, until the massive and imposing Gravelbourg School was completed and opened in 1917. The school was constructed from brick sourced from Clayback, Saskatchewan, and the stone was sourced from Tyndall, Manitoba. The stone on the base of the building is actually fossilized coral. Now, if you're wondering what fossilized coral is, it's actually a natural gemstone that is created when prehistoric coal is gradually replaced with agate. Corals are marine animals, and it's their skeletons that are fossilized and preserved. The fossil coral forms through the hardened deposits left by the silica-rich waters. This same fossilized coral stone was used in the construction of many of the buildings in that small town, including the cathedral, the old College Matthew, and the old hospital. Originally, the school was an all-girls school, and the sisters focused on teaching drama, arts, music, dance, as well as the regular curriculum that would have been under the Saskatchewan education program. The school was a massive structure that was 4 stories high, 300 feet in length, and 50 feet wide, almost the length of a football field. Originally, and for many decades after, the Convent of Jesus and Mary was an all-girls school, with many of the students from the area and across Canada traveling to Saskatchewan to attend the school for its exceptional education and musical program, as the nuns that taught at the convent were highly educated themselves and had attended colleges and universities in New York and Massachusetts, with their education focused on music, drama, arts, and sciences. The school had very strict rules, especially for the nuns to follow. The nuns, or the sisters as they were often referred to back in the day, were not permitted to visit any of the area homes of the families within the community. While in many other communities across Canada, nuns would often take it upon themselves to visit the homes of their parishioners and the local families to offer guidance and assistance. This, however, was frowned upon in Gravelbourg. If any of the families in the small community wanted to visit with the nuns or any of their daughters who were attending the school, they would actually have to go to the convent to meet with the sisters or the student in the large parlor room on the 2nd story of the building on visiting day, which was only Sunday afternoon. Yet it seems that the most coveted part of the convent and the educational building was on the 4th floor, as this is the area that housed 2 dormitories, one for the nuns and one for the female students, and another area that housed the music studio made up of 8 small cubicles. The small cubicles were surrounded by glass, and while each student could see the other student in the cubicle practicing their piano, the small cubicles provided a confined space for the music and were designed so that the sound of the pianos did not disturb the other students. It is this attention to the detailed advancement and the appreciation of the music that brought many of the young ladies to attend Gravelbourg in order to achieve the highest level of music education. Many of the students would spend countless hours in the music study rooms preparing for their Toronto Conservatory of Music examinations, with many of the students winning provincial and national awards and pursuing music as their future career. The nuns wore a typical black habit, a robe with a black headpiece while teaching, and this continued up until the 1920s, when the then Saskatchewan government, under Premier Anderson, adopted a law prohibiting all religious emblems and religious teachings in public schools. The Sisters of Jesus and Mary were forced to abandon their black religious robes and began teaching the children in what became known as the Anderson robes. By the 1930s, Canada had fallen into an economic depression, with thousands of people in Saskatchewan losing their jobs. Even the nuns' teaching jobs were on the chopping block. Due to the economic times and the depression, the Saskatchewan School Board just couldn't afford to pay the teachers, the nuns, anymore. Yet the nuns were dedicated to teaching, and they didn't want the students to be without an education. So the nuns actually accepted promissory notes as pay in lieu of actual money. Even sadder, though, was the fact that during these difficult times, some of the families were not able to pay the school fees to educate their daughters. And this is when the families would actually use the barter system to ensure that their daughters got an education. Sometimes the students would actually give the nuns cows, chickens, or produce in order to pay their school fees. Over the years, the historic and haunted building has changed hands several times, but the one thing that has always remained constant is the numerous stories of ghosts, hauntings, and disembodied voices that are still roaming throughout the educational institution. The 4th floor of the school stopped being used in the 1970s, with the entrance locked and completely off limits for decades. Yet it is this restricted 4th floor that is believed to have the numerous ghosts and paranormal activity that is still heard roaming throughout the massive structure to this day. While the 4th floor was the location where the nuns would teach the students, today it is an area known where the spirit of a woman is often seen wandering down the now empty and abandoned hallways. The spirit of this woman is often heard opening and closing the many doors on the 4th floor, sometimes just slamming them shut. While others have witnessed the ghost of a young boy walking the hallways and in the auditorium. The stories of people seeing the spirit of the young boy have been witnessed by students and teachers going back to when the school was being used as a local elementary school up until about 2016. These stories have been well documented as recently as in an interview with Global News. Some former teachers who taught at the now closed Gravelbourg school recounted some of their own ghostly encounters and frightening tales in this interview. One teacher, Lillian, had many of her own scary encounters while working at the now closed school. Lillian taught at the elementary school for 10 years and was terrified to go to the school after hours, and had many of her own terrifying, haunting encounters while working in the historic building. Lillian recounted a time when she and her students actually saw the ghost of the little boy, the same boy that had been witnessed wandering throughout the school for decades. Lillian recounted that one day her and her students were walking down the hallway on their way to the auditorium that had been reserved for her class. As the teacher and the students got closer to the room, they noticed a little boy in the distance walking across the hallway on the hardwood floor and entering the auditorium. Now, this struck the teacher and the students as a bit odd because they had reserved the room, and the students became a bit worried. But the teacher assured the students that they had nothing to worry about, as she had already arranged for her and the class to be in that room that day, and that she would let the little boy know that he would have to leave. The teacher recounted that when she tried to open the doors, they were all locked. This, of course, struck the teachers and the students as strange, as they had just seen the little boy enter the auditorium. Eventually, the doors were unlocked, and the teacher and the students entered the room. Yet when they looked around the auditorium, it was completely empty, and no little boy was found. This terrified the teacher and the students, as everyone knew that they had just seen the ghost of the little boy.
Love it. Beautiful. Terrified to go at night. When I was walking to the auditorium with my students, and we saw a little boy walk into the auditorium, and I just told my students, oh, there's someone in there. It's our time. We'll explain that it's our time and we'll kick them out. It's okay. We'll keep going. We got to the auditorium and the door was locked. So open the door and there's no one in the auditorium. We don't know where the little boy went. Some of them still remember it, that the little boy disappeared.
The stories go on and on. A nun, a janitor, a student. There's no telling who or what haunts the halls at night.
Another ghostly spirit that is often seen wandering throughout the building since the early 1900s is that of a young girl aged 18 or 19 that is often seen sitting in classrooms or in the music room on the 4th floor. Over the years, teachers and students have often seen what appears to be a sickly young lady just mysteriously appearing in random rooms throughout the building. Her face is described as being ghostly white, and she can often be heard coughing. The story of how this ghost came to be at the building goes back to around 1918, when legend tells us that a young girl had desperately wanted to be a nun at the convent of Jesus and Mary, but her family didn't want her to leave home and forbid it. Yet the young teenage girl was determined, and one night, in the cover of darkness, she left the family home and never told anybody where she was going, eventually arriving in Gravelbourg to begin her education and training with the sisters. Yet as soon as the young lady arrived, she developed a terrible cough, as this was right around the time of the Spanish flu, when it was rampant across Canada. And it was soon determined that the young lady was indeed infected with influenza. I'm sure that the sisters did everything they could to care for the young lady, but sadly, just days after arriving, the young woman died, and it is now believed that it is her spirit that has remained behind at the convent of Jesus and Mary, forever wandering throughout the institution where she so desperately wanted to receive her education.
One of the stories I heard was based on a room that was close to my classroom, and it was one of a young girl who had moved to Gravelbourg to become a nun, and she hadn't told her parents. She basically ran away, and in the time that she moved to Gravelbourg, she was sick with tuberculosis and ended up passing away, and her parents not knowing about where she had gone and that she was coming back to haunt the school.
While in the dim hallways of the former convent still lingers the echoes of the dedicated nuns' prayers that are often heard faintly in the distance. The spirits of the nuns that taught and died within the convent have remained behind, haunting the very classrooms that they once illuminated with their knowledge. Over the years, teachers and former students have witnessed the ghostly figures cloaked in their black robes gliding along the hallways and ascending the creaky oak staircase. While staff have reported that as they walk by the empty classrooms, that they'll often catch out of the corner of their eye a glimpse of a nun in her black habit standing in front of the classroom by the chalkboard. Yet when the person takes a second glance, her ghostly presence has vanished. Yet it is the 4th floor that has always been referred to as the most scariest location in the building. While the 4th floor was a vital part of the school as it housed the music cubicles, it is an area that was completely shut off to the public in the 1970s and was kept under lock and key. But it is the 4th floor where the strangest sounds seem to emanate from.
I've heard some colleagues tell me of some events of hearing noises about them on floors that had been closed for years. As a student, we were never allowed on the 4th floor.
Adding to the mystery, an entire floor under lock and key, forbidden to students. Rooms unused since the sisters of the convent left.
Staff and students would often hear people running on the 4th floor when they knew that there was nobody up there. They would often hear doors slamming and items crashing to the floor. Yet no matter how many times the strange and unearthly sounds came from the top floor, nobody would ever venture up there, as the area was always locked. There are thousands of haunted schools across Canada that have many of their own ghostly experiences and paranormal activity, including the haunted Grey Nun Convent and Mother House in Montreal, Quebec, a story that I actually covered in episode 23 of this podcast. And if you want the full story, please take the time to go back and listen to that episode. The Grey Nuns Convent in Montreal, a massive multi-wing building that once housed the Grey Nuns, a Roman Catholic convent, yet today it's a student residency housing up to 600 Concordia University students, with a crypt in the basement and many ghosts still haunting the historic structure. From the ghosts of the former nuns that wander the hallways, to the spirits of the children from the orphanage that died in the fire, and the spirit of the man that was executed in 1752. Whether it's the spirits of the nuns and the former students still haunting the former Gravelbourg school in Saskatchewan, or the spirits of the nuns and the children at the Grey Nuns residency in Montreal, one thing is for certain, is that both of these academic institutions are steeped in folklore and haunted history still to this day. Well, everyone, that is the end of episode 27 of Haunted Canada, and I wanted to thank everyone for listening, and also thank you to the show sponsor, Edmonton Ghost Tours. I will link it in the show notes. If you would like to support the continuation of the Haunted Canada podcast, to hear more episodes, please follow the podcast, give us a like, and a 5-star written review. Also, you can follow us on our different social media platforms, or if you have any ghostly stories, hauntings, or true crimes that you would like for us to cover on this podcast and that I can read out to everybody, please email me through the website hauntedcanada.com. And a reminder that there are some very exciting changes coming for Haunted Canada, and the next episode will be released on Monday, October 7th, just in time for Halloween. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.